The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. They built telescopes. They sent rockets. They dreamed of meeting other intelligent beings among the stars. When those beings finally came, they did not come as friends. The first ships appeared above Earth on a bright Tuesday morning in the year 2147. They blocked out the sun over every major city. Massive vessels, each one larger than a mountain, hung in the sky like dark clouds promising a terrible storm. The world's governments tried to make contact. They sent radio signals. They broadcast messages of peace in every human language. They waited for a response with hope and fear mixed together in their hearts. The response came in the form of plasma fire. The Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 40,000 years. 12 elder species, each one ancient beyond human understanding, had joined together long ago to control all known space. They had laws. They had systems. They had a way of doing things that had worked for longer than humans had existed as a species, and they had decided that Earth belonged to them. Grand Arbiter Thesan of the Valkyrie watched the invasion from his command ship. His species had 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on a face that humans would have found disturbing. His skin was the color of old copper, and he moved with the slow confidence of a being who had never known true fear. "Report," he said to his tactical officer. "The primitive species is resisting, Grand Arbiter. They are using chemical propulsion weapons and nuclear devices." Thesan made a sound that was something like a laugh. "Nuclear devices. How quaint. Continue the suppression." Below, on the surface of Earth, humanity fought back with everything it had. Tanks rolled through city streets. Fighter jets screamed through the sky. Soldiers fired rifles at enemies they could barely see. Missiles rose on trails of fire, reaching for the alien ships above. None of it mattered. The Concord shields absorbed nuclear blasts like a pond absorbs raindrops. Their weapons cut through human armor like sunlight through fog. In the first hour, every major military base on Earth was reduced to smoking craters. In the first day, every human navy was sunk. In the first week, every government that refused to surrender was erased. Some humans kept fighting. In mountains and forests and ruined cities, small groups of soldiers continued their resistance. They set traps. They launched ambushes. They died by the thousands, but they kept fighting. The Concord found this amusing. "They are persistent," noted Commander Vexal, Thesan's second-in-command. "Like insects." "All young species are the same," Thesan replied. "They believe their individual lives matter. They believe they can change the outcome through willpower alone. They will learn." The subjugation of Earth took exactly 3 days. By the end of the 3rd day, every human who still held a weapon was dead. The rest, 6 billion men, women, and children were rounded up like cattle and processed. Processing was efficient. Each human was scanned, cataloged, and assigned a number. They were given tags to wear around their necks, metal discs that contained all the information the Concord needed to know about them: name, age, skills, health status, breeding potential. The Concord was very interested in breeding potential. Humans reproduced quickly compared to elder species. A healthy human female could produce a new worker every year for decades. This made them valuable. The elder species divided Earth among themselves. The Valkyrie took North America and Europe. The Krether claimed Asia. The Moldok wanted Africa for its mineral resources. And so on, 12 ways, until every piece of human territory belonged to someone else. Then the real work began. Humans were put to work immediately. They mined minerals. They built structures. They cleaned the massive stations that the Concord constructed in orbit around Earth. They did the jobs that were too dangerous, too boring, or too unpleasant for elder species to do themselves. The work was hard. The hours were long. The food was barely enough to survive. But humans adapted, as they always had. They learned to keep their heads down. They learned to speak the languages of their masters. They learned which overseers could be bargained with and which ones should be avoided. They learned to survive. Thiessen was promoted for his success on Earth. He became one of the 12 Grand Arbiters who ruled the Concord, a position of almost unlimited power. From time to time, he would review reports about the human population, tracking their productivity and compliance. The numbers were always good. Humans are ideal workers, his analysts told him. They are intelligent enough to perform complex tasks, but not intelligent enough to cause problems. They have no natural weapons, no claws, no venom, no armor. They form emotional bonds that make them easy to control. Threaten their families, and they will do anything. Thiessen nodded, satisfied. Continue as planned. I want production quotas increased by 10% next quarter. Yes, Grand Arbiter. Years passed. Then decades. Children were born who had never known freedom. They grew up learning two things: how to work and how to obey. They watched their parents grow old and tired, their backs bent from labor, their spirits broken by endless servitude. Some of them dreamed of something different. But dreams were dangerous. Dreams got people killed. Maya-chan was born in the year 2156, 9 years after the invasion. Her mother worked in a processing plant, sorting minerals for 16 hours a day. Her father had been killed for looking at an overseer the wrong way. She had no memory of him except for the stories her mother told in whispered voices late at night, when the monitors were less likely to be active. Your father was a soldier, her mother said. He fought when the ships came. He was brave. What happened to him? Young Maya asked. Her mother's eyes went distant. He was too brave. He wouldn't stop fighting. So they made an example of him. Maya learned from this. Being brave was dangerous. Being noticed was dangerous. The humans who survived were the ones who stayed quiet, who worked hard, who never gave the overseers a reason to look at them twice. So Maya became invisible. She worked in the mines from the age of 12, crawling through tunnels too small for adult bodies. She never complained. She never asked questions. She never looked anyone in the eye. But she watched. She listened. And she remembered everything. By the time she was 20, Maya had learned 7 alien languages. She knew the shift schedules of every overseer in her sector. She knew which ones took bribes and which ones didn't. She knew the location of every camera, every sensor, every security checkpoint within 100 kilometers. She didn't know why she collected this information. She just knew that it felt important, like gathering weapons for a war that might never come. One night, when Maya was 23 years old, something strange happened. She was in her sleeping quarters, a small room that she shared with 11 other workers, when a hand touched her shoulder in the darkness. Don't speak, a voice whispered. Don't turn around. Just listen. Maya's heart pounded, but she did as she was told. We've been watching you, the voice continued. You're careful. You're smart. You see things that others miss. We need people like you. Who are you? Maya breathed. We're the ones who remember. The ones who haven't forgotten what we were before. The ones who are planning something. Planning what? There was a pause. When the voice spoke again, it was barely louder than breath. Everything. The hand left her shoulder. By the time Maya turned around, there was no one there. For weeks afterward, Maya thought she had imagined it. A dream, a hallucination. Too much recycled air and too little real food. But then she started noticing things. Small things. A worker who moved differently than the others. with a controlled efficiency that spoke of training rather than exhaustion. A message scratched into a wall in a code that Maya almost recognized. A rhythm tapped on pipes that seemed random but followed a pattern she couldn't quite grasp. Something was happening. Something had been happening for a very long time, and Maya had been chosen to be part of it. The Concord's overseers saw none of this. They saw humans working, humans sleeping, humans dying. They saw numbers in reports, productivity up, resistance down, population stable. They saw exactly what they expected to see. This was their first mistake. The elder species had studied humanity before the invasion. They had intercepted radio signals. They had analyzed human history. They had concluded that humans were violent, divided, and self-destructive. They believed that humans would never be able to work together long enough to pose a threat. What they failed to understand was that human history was not just a record of conflict. It was also a record of survival. Humans had survived ice ages and plagues and famines. They had survived rulers who tried to exterminate them. They had survived horrors that would have broken other species. And they had done it by working together. Not always, not perfectly. But when the situation was desperate enough, when the enemy was clear enough, humans could unite in ways that the elder species had never imagined. The Concord also made another mistake, perhaps an even greater one. They studied human governments, human armies, human nations. They looked at the structures that humans had built and concluded that these structures represented the full extent of human capability. They never studied what humans did when those structures were taken away. They never studied what humans built in secret, in darkness, in whispers passed from parent to child. They never studied what humans could create when fueled not by hope, but by something much older and much darker. They never studied human spite. Spite was something the elder species didn't really understand. The Valkyrie had a word for it, but the word translated roughly to small anger, a petty emotion beneath the notice of mature beings. The Concord believed that spite was a weakness, a sign of limited intelligence and emotional control. They were wrong. Human spite was not small. Human spite was an ocean. It was a force that could sustain a person through decades of suffering. It could be passed down through generations, growing stronger with each telling. It could be quiet and patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And it could build things. Terrible, magnificent things. 20 years after the invasion, in a mine deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa, a group of humans gathered in secret. They were workers, janitors, low-level technicians, the invisible people that the Concord never bothered to notice. Some of them had been meeting like this for years. Others were new, brought into the fold one whispered conversation at a time. A woman stood at the front of the group. Her name was Amara Okonkwo, and she had once been a professor of engineering at a university that no longer existed. Now she cleaned filtration units on the surface and designed weapons in her head. "Report," she said. One by one, the others shared what they had learned. Schedules, access codes, technical specifications stolen from overseer datapads. Information that by itself meant nothing, but combined with thousands of other pieces of information collected over decades, it formed a picture of weakness. "Their shields can be disrupted if you hit them with the right frequency," said a young man who worked in communications repair. "I found the specifications in a manual that was supposed to be destroyed. Their plasma weapons overload if you feed them too much power," said an older woman. "One of their technicians got drunk and told me. He thought I couldn't understand his language." "Their ships require a specific mineral for fuel," said another. "We mine that mineral. We know where all the deposits are. We know which refineries process it. We know how it gets from here to there." Amara listened to all of it. She had been listening for 15 years. ever since she first joined the Resistance. In that time, she had watched the organization grow from a handful of angry survivors to a network that spanned a dozen star systems. And still they waited. Still they planned. Still they gathered information. When? Someone asked. The question hung in the air, heavy with frustration and desperate hope. When do we fight back? Amara's answer was the same one she always gave. When we're ready. Not a moment before. The elder species lived for thousands of years. They thought in centuries, planned in millennia. They believed this gave them an advantage over shorter-lived species. In some ways, they were right. But they had miscalculated with humanity. Humans didn't live for thousands of years. They lived for decades, brief flashes of consciousness in the vast darkness of time. But that brevity gave them something the elder species lacked: urgency. Every human life was precious because every human life was short. And when humans decided that something was worth dying for, they would spend every moment of their brief existence working toward that goal. The Concord believed that humans would forget, that the children born in slavery would accept their place in the natural order of things. That time would dull the edge of human anger. They were wrong about this too. Maya-chan was 40 years old when she first met Amara Okonkwo. By then, Maya had risen through the invisible ranks of the Resistance to become a coordinator, responsible for information gathering across 3 mining colonies. She had never held a weapon, never thrown a punch, never done anything that could be called fighting. But she had built something. A network of eyes and ears that watched everything and forgot nothing. A web of human intelligence that stretched across Concord space, invisible and patient and waiting. You've done good work, Amara told her. Better than good. Essential. Maya shook her head. It doesn't feel like enough. We've been gathering information for decades, but we still haven't done anything. People are dying every day. Children are being born into slavery. And we just watch. Amara put a hand on her shoulder. I know. Believe me, I know. But we only get one chance at this. If we move too early, we die. All of us. And then there's no one left to try again. So when? Amara smiled. It was not a happy expression. Soon, she said. The pieces are almost in place. A few more years. Maybe less. What pieces? The ones that will change everything. Deep in hidden shipyards scattered across Concord space. In hollowed-out asteroids and abandoned mining stations and places that the elder species had forgotten existed, humans were building something. They had started with nothing. Scraps of metal. Stolen tools. Knowledge pieced together from 1 million overheard conversations and intercepted transmissions and borrowed technical manuals. They had worked in secret, in darkness, moving slowly to avoid detection. It had taken them 50 years. But now, at last, the work was almost done. In a shipyard, hidden beneath the ice of Pluto, a young engineer named Raj Patel ran his hands along the hull of something impossible. A ship, a human ship, built with technology that combined the best of 12 elder species with something uniquely, terrifyingly human. She's beautiful, he whispered. The ship was 12 kilometers long. Her hull was black as the void between stars, designed to absorb every form of radiation that the Concord used for detection. Her weapons were a hybrid of alien technology and human innovation, capable of destruction on a scale that the elder species had never imagined possible. A name was painted on her hull in 100 human languages, because the builders couldn't agree on just one. They had named her the Spite of Terra, and she was only the first. In conference rooms across Concord space, the Grand Arbiters reviewed their reports and found nothing concerning. Human productivity was excellent. Human resistance was minimal. Human population was well controlled. Everything was exactly as it should be. They had no idea that they were sitting on top of a bomb that had taken 70 years to build. They had no idea that every human who served them, who cleaned their stations and mined their minerals and bowed their heads in submission, was counting down the days. They had no idea that humanity hadn't been broken. It had been waiting. Admiral Yuki Tanaka had never seen the sky. She was born in the year 2154, 7 years after the invasion, in an underground facility on Mars that had once been a human colony. Now it was a labor camp, a place where humans were sent to die slowly while extracting minerals from the red planet's crust. Her mother had been a scientist before the invasion. Her father had been a soldier who died fighting. She had no memories of either of them, just stories passed down through other prisoners about people who had refused to give up Dot, while I had grown up surrounded by rock and metal and recycled air. She had worked in the mines from the age of 8, small enough to fit into spaces where adults could not go. She had watched friends die from accidents, from exhaustion, from the casual cruelty of overseers who viewed human life as less valuable than the minerals they extracted. Dot by the time she was 15. Yuki had decided that she would either escape or die trying. Dot. She was recruited by the resistance 3 years later. The man who found her was old, older than anyone Yuki had ever met. His name was Marcus Webb, and he had been a general in the human military before the invasion. Now he was a janitor, cleaning toilets in the overseer quarters. "You're smart," he told her during a stolen moment in a maintenance corridor. "You're angry, and you're careful. Those are the 3 things we need." "Who is we?" Yuki asked. Marcus smiled. His teeth were mostly gone, knocked out years ago by a Valkyrie guard. "Everyone," he said. "Everyone who remembers." The resistance had no official name. Its members called it different things: the network, the underground, the whisper. It was an organism that had grown in darkness, spreading through the enslaved human population like roots through soil. It had no central headquarters, no chain of command that could be broken. It was everywhere and nowhere, made up of millions of ordinary people doing small, invisible things. A technician who copied data files while pretending to clean. A factory worker who sabotaged equipment in ways that looked like accidents. A domestic servant who listened to conversations and memorized every word. A nurse who treated wounded resistors and claimed they had died. Each person knew only a few others in the network. If they were caught, they could betray only those few. The organization was designed to survive losses, to heal from wounds, to keep growing no matter how many of its cells were destroyed. Yuki learned all of this slowly over years. She was given small tasks at first, carrying messages, watching for patrols, memorizing schedules. Then larger ones, recruiting new members, training others in what she had learned. Coordinating activities across multiple facilities. By the time she was 30, she was running operations across the entire Mars sector. By 40, she was one of the 12 people who coordinated the resistance across all of Concord Space. And by 50, she was something else entirely. "We need a leader," Amara Okonkwo said during one of their rare face-to-face meetings. They were in a hidden chamber beneath the ice of Europa, surrounded by equipment that had taken decades to smuggle and build. "Someone who can command the fleet when the time comes." "Fleet?" Yuki shook her head. "We have one ship, one, and it's not even finished. It will be finished. And it won't be alone." Amara pulled up a holographic display, itself stolen technology, repurposed and improved. Points of light appeared across a map of Concord space, scattered but numerous. 17 shipyards, 32 ships under construction, more than 100 smaller vessels for support and strike operations. Yuki stared at the display. She had known pieces of this information, but seeing it all together was something else. A weight settled in her stomach, not fear exactly, but something close to it. "That's not a resistance," she said quietly. "That's an army, yes, and an army needs a general." Amara met her eyes. "You're the best we have, Yuki. You've been commanding operations for 20 years. You know our people. You know the enemy. You know how to fight without being seen. Fighting without being seen is different from fighting a war, is it?" Amara's voice was soft. "We've been fighting a war for 70 years. The only difference is that the enemy didn't know it. Now they will." Yuki was quiet for a long moment. Through the chamber's walls, she could hear the distant sounds of machinery pumps and filters keeping the hidden base alive. Somewhere above them, millions of humans were working in Concord facilities, keeping their heads down, waiting for a signal that might never come. Except now it would come. The signal they had been waiting for, planning for, dreaming of across 3 generations. The moment when humanity would stop hiding and start fighting. "When?" she asked. 5 years, Amara said. "Maybe less. The Spite of Terra will be ready in 3. The rest of the fleet within 5. After that," she spread her hands. "After that, we move. 5 years." Yuki closed her eyes. "Do you know what can happen in 5 years? How many people will die?" "Yes, I know exactly." Amara's voice hardened. "But if we move too soon, everyone dies. Every human in Concord space. They'll exterminate us like they've exterminated other species who caused too much trouble. We know this. We've seen the records." The records. Yuki had seen them 2 stolen data files that documented the Concord's history of dealing with rebellious species. Species that had been wiped out entirely, their worlds sterilized, their names erased from history. The Concord didn't negotiate with rebels. They didn't show mercy. They simply removed the problem with the cold efficiency of beings who had been ruling the galaxy for 40,000 years. Humanity would get one chance, one single moment when everything had to go right. If they failed, if they moved too early or too late or in the wrong way, they would join the list of extinct species that had made the mistake of challenging the Concord. 5 years, Yuki said again. She opened her eyes. "I'll need access to everything. Every ship, every operation, every piece of intelligence we have." Amara nodded. "You'll have it. And I'll need to train people. Real training, not just the basics. We need pilots, weapons officers, tactical commanders. We need people who can fight a real battle, not just sabotage and intelligence work. We have training programs already. Hidden simulators using stolen Concord software. But you're right, they need to be expanded. What about soldiers? Ground forces? We have plenty of people willing to fight. What we lack is equipment." Yuki thought about this. Equipment was the hardest thing to acquire. Weapons, armor, vehicles, all of it was tightly controlled by the Concord. Humans weren't allowed to own anything more dangerous than a kitchen knife. "We'll have to take it from them," she said. "When the time comes, we hit their armories first, before they know what's happening. That's risky. If we tip them off, then we need to make sure we don't." Yuki's mind was already racing, planning, calculating. This was what she did. What she had always done. We hit them everywhere at once. Every armory, every base, every ship. In the same moment. They won't be able to respond because they won't know what's happening. Can we coordinate something like that? Across all of Concord space? We'll have to. Yuki looked at the holographic display again, at the scattered points of light that represented humanity's hidden strength. We've been communicating in secret for decades. Now we just need to do it one more time. One signal. One moment. Everything at once. Amara was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You're right. It's the only way." She reached out and touched Yuki's shoulder. "Admiral Tanaka. It has a nice ring to it. I'm not a real admiral. I've never even been on a ship. None of us have. We'll learn together." Amara smiled, and there was something fierce in her expression. "We've learned everything else they tried to keep from us. Why should this be different?" The next 5 years were the longest and shortest of Yuki's life. She traveled constantly, moving through Concord space disguised as cargo, as a transferred worker, as a dead body being shipped for processing. She visited every hidden shipyard, every training facility, every cell of the Resistance network. She met thousands of people pilots who had learned to fly using stolen simulators, engineers who had designed weapons in their heads while working in Concord factories, soldiers who had trained in secret using improvised equipment. All of them were waiting. All of them were ready. All of them looked at her with the same expression, hope mixed with desperation, like survivors of a shipwreck seeing land on the horizon. The weight of their expectations was crushing. But Yuki carried it. She had been carrying weights her entire life. She also learned everything she could about Concord tactics, Concord weaknesses, Concord psychology. She studied their victories and their defeats, the few they had suffered, mostly against each other in the ancient wars, before the alliance was formed. She learned how each of the 12 elder species thought, how they made decisions, what they valued, and what they feared. The Velkari were the most dangerous. They had dominated the Concord from the beginning, and they were paranoid about challenges to their authority. But their paranoia was focused on each other and on the other elder species. They couldn't imagine that humans, weak, short-lived, conquered humans, could pose any real threat. The Krethar were arrogant. They believed their technology was the most advanced in the galaxy, and they had stopped innovating centuries ago. Their ships were powerful but predictable, following patterns that hadn't changed in thousands of years. The Moldok were brutal but not clever. They solved problems with force, always, and they couldn't adapt when force didn't work. And so on, down through all 12 species. Each one had weaknesses. Each one had blind spots. And humanity had spent 70 years mapping every single one of them. "We're not going to fight them on their terms," Yuki told her commanders during one of their secret gatherings. "We can't. They're stronger than us, more experienced than us, more numerous than us. If we fight a straight battle, we lose. And how do we fight?" Ask Commander Chen Maya Chen, who had risen through the resistance to become one of Yuki's most trusted officers. "We cheat." Yuki brought up a tactical display. "We use everything we know about them against them. We attack where they're weak. We disappear when they're strong. We make them doubt themselves, doubt each other, doubt everything they think they know." "Psychological warfare," said another commander. "More than that. Total warfare. Every tool, every weapon, every advantage we can find or make or steal. We don't play by their rules. We don't play by any rules. We do whatever it takes to win." The room was silent. Yuki looked at the faces around her, humans of every background, every age, united by suffering and hope and something darker. "I'm not going to lie to you," she said. "A lot of us are going to die. Maybe most of us. This isn't a story where the good guys win easily and everyone lives happily ever after. This is a war, and wars have costs." She paused. "But our children will be free. Our grandchildren will be free. Every generation after us will look up at the sky and know that they own it, that no one can take it from them. That's what we're fighting for. Not ourselves, them." Maya Chun spoke quietly. "My grandmother died in the invasion. My mother died in the mines. I never expected to die peacefully in my sleep. If I'm going to die anyway, I'd rather die fighting." Others nodded. One by one, around the room, murmurs of agreement spread. Yuki felt something shift in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or gratitude. Or just the recognition that she was surrounded by people who had made the same choice she had, to risk everything for a future they might never see. "Then let's get to work," she said. The preparations accelerated. Ships were completed, tested, hidden again. Weapons were manufactured in secret factories that the Concorde didn't know existed. Communications networks were established using technology that the elder species believed was impossible. And everywhere, humans waited. Millions of them across thousands of worlds, each one ready to play their part when the signal came. 3 months before the target date, something unexpected happened. One of the hidden shipyards was discovered. Yuki got the news in the middle of the night, a coded message that made her blood run cold. A Valkyrie patrol had stumbled across the facility in an asteroid belt near the Krethar border. They had found ships. Human ships. Ships that shouldn't exist. How much did they see? Yuki demanded. "Enough," said the messenger. 2 cruisers, partially completed. Manufacturing equipment. Records. Records? We destroyed what we could, but they might have captured some data. We don't know how much. Yuki closed her eyes. This was the nightmare scenario. The thing they had feared for 70 years. If the Concorde knew what was happening, if they understood the scope of the rebellion, they would crush it before it could begin. "What's our status?" she asked. "The Spite of Terra is ready. Fully operational, fully armed. 23 other ships are combat ready. Another dozen could be ready within weeks. And the ground forces? Equipped and trained. Ready to move on your order." Yuki thought fast. They had planned for 5 more months. 5 months to complete the remaining ships, to position their forces, to coordinate the massive simultaneous strike that would cripple the Concorde before they could respond. But 5 months was a long time. If the Concorde started looking seriously for other shipyards, if they increased patrols, if they began questioning human workers. "We move up the timeline," she said. The messenger stared at her. "How much?" 3 days. The Concorde summit begins in 3 days. All 12 Grand Arbiters will be on Axiom Prime. Yuki's mind was racing, recalculating, adjusting. We hit them there. We show them what we've built. And we make them understand that everything they thought they knew about us was wrong. 3 days? "Admiral, we're not ready. Half our fleet will have to catch up." Yuki's voice was hard. "We don't have a choice. If we wait, they'll find us. They'll destroy everything we've built. This is our moment. Now or never." She sent the signal that night. Across Concorde space, in hidden bases and secret facilities and ordinary quarters, where ordinary humans lived their ordinary enslaved lives, the message spread. Through whispered conversations and tapped codes and encrypted transmissions that looked like random noise. 3 days. 3 days until everything changed. Yuki stood in the command center of the Spite of Terra, watching the final preparations. The ship hummed around her, alive with power that the Concorde had never imagined humans could wield. Through the viewports, she could see the cold stars waiting. She had never seen the sky, never felt real wind on her face, never known what it was like to walk freely on a world that belonged to her people. Maybe she never would. Maybe she would die in the coming battle, along with thousands of others who had given their lives to this cause. But if she did, she would die fighting. And that was more than most humans had been allowed in 70 years. "Admiral," said her first officer, "all ships report ready. All ground teams report ready. We are prepared to begin on your order." Yuki took a deep breath. The weight on her shoulders had never felt heavier or lighter. "Set course for Axiom Prime," she said. "It's time to remind the galaxy who we are." The fleet moved out of the asteroid field. 17 ships emerging from hiding places across Concord space. They converged on a single point, using communication methods that the elder species couldn't detect, coordinating a movement that should have been impossible for a conquered slave race. The Concord didn't notice. They were busy preparing for the summit, gathering their leaders, celebrating 40,000 years of rule. They had no idea that humanity was coming. And when the humans arrived, the galaxy would never be the same. Axiom Prime was the most beautiful world in the galaxy. It hung in space like a jewel, its surface covered with cities of crystal and gold. Massive towers reached toward the heavens, their spires catching the light of 3 suns. Gardens the size of continents bloomed with flowers from 1,000 worlds. Rivers of liquid silver flowed through valleys where the air itself sparkled with engineered particles. This was the heart of the Concord, the place where the 12 elder species came together to rule the stars. For 40,000 years, the great decisions of galactic civilization had been made here, in chambers carved from living crystal and decorated with the treasures of conquered peoples. The annual Summit was the most important event of the Concord year. Representatives from all 12 species gathered to divide territories, settle disputes, and plan the future of their eternal empire. It was a time of ceremony and celebration, of speeches and feasts, of displays of power that reminded everyone of the natural order of things. Grand Arbiter Thiessen of the Valkyrie presided over this year's summit. He was old now, even by the standards of his long-lived species. Nearly 3,000 years had passed since his birth. His copper skin had darkened with age, and his 4 eyes had grown dim. But his mind was still sharp, and his grip on power was stronger than ever. He sat on a throne of black crystal at the head of the great chamber, looking down at the assembled representatives. Each of the 11 other species had sent their finest leaders, generals, diplomats, all dressed in the formal attire of their cultures. The room glittered with precious metals and rare gems, a display of wealth that would have stunned any human who saw it. "We gather once more," Thiessen said, his voice carrying through the chamber without amplification, "to celebrate our unity, to renew our commitment to the principles that have guided us for 40 millennia. The plan for the next century of prosperity and peace." The representatives murmured their approval. This was how the summit always began, with grand words and grander ceremonies. The real negotiations would come later, behind closed doors, where the elder species would argue and threaten and bargain for advantage. But the ceremonies mattered too. They were a reminder of the Concord's power, its permanence, its absolute control over the galaxy. Every species that served the Concord knew that this was how things had always been and how they would always be. The first day of the summit passed without incident. Speeches were given. Toasts were raised. A new species, small, 4-legged creatures from a world in the outer rim, was formally inducted into the Concord as a servant race. They would be put to work mining asteroids, replacing the humans who had grown too numerous in that sector. Thiessen barely noticed them. New servant species were inducted every few years. They came and went, their brief lives flickering against the eternal flame of Concord civilization. None of them mattered, except as resources to be used. On the second day, the first reports came in. "Grand Arbiter," said his aide, a young Valkyrie who had served him for only a century, "we have lost contact with Border Fleet 7. Thiessen looked up from the document he was reviewing. "Lost contact?" "Yes, Grand Arbiter. They were patrolling the edge of Crether space. Their last transmission was routine. Then, nothing." "Have you sent ships to investigate?" "We have dispatched a scout vessel. They should arrive within the hour." Thiessen nodded and returned to his document. Border fleets went silent occasionally. Communication equipment failed. Patrols entered regions where signals were disrupted. It was annoying but not alarming. An hour later, The scout vessel went silent too. "This is unusual," said Commander Vexal, who had been Thizan's second-in-command for 500 years. "Two vessels, both silent? In the same region? Send another patrol," Thiessen ordered. "A full squadron. And alert Border Fleet 8 to move to a support position." "Yes, Grand Arbiter." The squadron was dispatched. The summit continued. Representatives argued about mineral rights and trade routes and the allocation of labor from subject species. Thiessen listened with half an ear. His attention increasingly focused on the reports coming from the border. Border Fleet 8 reported that they had reached the last known position of Border Fleet 7. There was nothing there. "Nothing?" Thiessen demanded. "What do you mean, nothing?" "No ships, Grand Arbiter. No debris. No signal traces. Just empty space." "That's impossible. Ships don't simply vanish. We are conducting detailed scans. So far, we have found no evidence of what happened." Thiessen felt a strange sensation in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. It took him a moment to recognize it as unease. "Cancel the summit sessions for today," he told his aide. "I need to focus on this matter." The representatives were not happy, but they complied. Thiessen retreated to his private chambers, surrounded by screens showing data from across the Concord. More reports were coming in now, each one stranger than the last. A supply convoy had disappeared. Near the Maldoc border, a listening post in the outer systems had gone offline. A patrol ship near a human mining colony had sent a garbled transmission something about an unknown vessel and then gone silent. "What is happening?" Thiessen muttered. He had ruled the Concord for 800 years. He had seen rebellions and wars and natural disasters. He had faced challenges that would have destroyed lesser beings, but he had never seen anything like this. "Grand Arbiter," said Commander Vexal, entering the chamber. His voice was strange, tight, controlled in a way that suggested he was working hard to keep it that way. "We have a situation. I know we have a situation. I have been reading the reports." "No, Grand Arbiter. A different situation." Vexal paused. "Axiom Prime's orbital defense grid is offline." The words didn't make sense at first. Thiessen stared at his commander, waiting for clarification. "Offline?" he repeated. "Yes, Grand Arbiter. Station by station, satellite by satellite. The grid has been disabling itself. We don't know how. We can't stop it." "That's impossible. The defense grid has 17 redundant systems. It cannot be disabled remotely, and yet it is happening." Vexal's voice cracked slightly. "We are blind, Grand Arbiter. Whatever is out there, we cannot see it." Thiessen rose from his seat. His old bones protested, but he ignored them. He walked to the main view screen and brought up a display of Axiom Prime's defensive systems. What he saw made his hearts. He had 3 of them skip a beat. The display was almost entirely dark. Where thousands of defense stations should have shown green, there was nothing. Empty. Silent. Dead. "How?" he whispered. "We don't know. Our technicians are investigating, but..." The main screen flickered. Then it went dark entirely. When it came back on, there was a face on it. A human face. Thiessen had seen many humans in his long life. They were common servants, found on every world in the Concord. He had never paid much attention to them. They all looked more or less the same to him, soft, weak, with those strange flat faces and 2 eyes set too close together. But this face was different. This face looked back at him with an expression he had never seen on a human before. It looked confident. "Grand Arbiter Thiessen," the human said. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. "My name is Admiral Yuki Tanaka. You don't know me, but I know you." Thiessen tried to speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. I'm going to tell you something now, the human continued. Something important. Please listen carefully, because I will only say it once. Around Thyssen, his aides and commanders stood frozen. On every screen in the chamber, on every screen on Axiom Prime, the same face appeared. The same voice spoke. You studied us for 3 days. We studied you for 70 years. The screen flickered again. The human's face was replaced by an image of view of space above Axiom Prime. Empty space, filled with stars and nothing else. Then the stars began to disappear. Something was moving. Something huge. Something that blocked out the light of distant suns as it passed in front of them. Something that was coming closer. What is that? Someone whispered. The answer came a moment later as the thing uncloaked. Thyssen had seen many warships in his life. Valkyrie dreadnoughts, Krethar battlecruisers, Moldok assault carriers. Ships the size of small cities, bristling with weapons capable of destroying worlds. This was bigger. The vessel that appeared above Axiom Prime was 12 kilometers long. Its hull was black as the void, covered with weapons that Thyssen didn't recognize. Some of them looked like Valkyrie plasma cannons, but modified, improved. Others looked like Krethar energy projectors, but wrong somehow, designed in ways that shouldn't work. And some of them looked like nothing he had ever seen before. Impossible, he breathed. The human's face appeared on the screen again. You're probably wondering how, Admiral Tanaka said. You're probably thinking that this can't be real. That humans couldn't build something like this. That we're too weak, too primitive, too conquered. She smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Let me explain. For 70 years, your species has used us as labor. You put us in your factories, your mines, your shipyards. You gave us access to your technology because you needed us to repair it. You showed us your secrets because you never imagined we were paying attention. On the screens, the massive ship rotated slowly, displaying its weapons arrays. Thyssen counted plasma cannons, energy projectors, missile tubes, and devices he couldn't identify. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. Every tool you gave us, we copied. Every manual we cleaned, we memorized. Every conversation we overheard, we recorded. Tanaka's voice hardened. You thought we were stupid. You thought we were broken. You thought that because we bowed our heads and called you master, we had accepted our place. She leaned closer to the camera. You were wrong. Thyssen found his voice at last. This changes nothing, he said, trying to sound commanding. You have one ship. We have thousands. You cannot fight the entire Concord. One ship? Tanaka laughed. It was not a happy sound. Grand Arbiter, did you think we spent 70 years building just one ship? The screen changed again. A map appeared, a map of Concord space, dotted with points of light. As Thyssen watched, more points appeared. Then more still. 17 shipyards, Tanaka said. 32 capital ships. 112 support vessels. 23,000 trained crew. And, she paused for effect, 6 billion humans across Concord space. Every single one of whom has been waiting for this moment their entire lives. You're bluffing. Am I? Tanaka's voice was ice. Check your communications. Check your border fleets. Check your mining colonies and processing stations and every facility where humans work. Check, Grand Arbiter. And then tell me I'm bluffing. Thyssen turned to his communications officer. Report, he demanded. What is our status across Concord space? The officer's hands were shaking as he worked his console. Reports began flowing in, each one worse than the last. 3 border fleets had gone dark. Not destroyed, just dark, their communications cut off by unknown means. Multiple orbital stations were reporting internal problems. Power failures, computer malfunctions, doors that wouldn't open, and airlocks that wouldn't close. A dozen mining colonies had gone silent. Their human populations had stopped responding to overseer commands. And everywhere, in every sector, human workers were putting down their tools and standing still. Millions of them, waiting. "This is a coordinated attack," Vexal said, his voice hollow. "Across all of Concord space. At the same moment. How is this possible?" "You taught us," Tanaka answered. The screens had switched back to her face. "Your communications technology, your coordination protocols, your command and control systems. We learned them all. We improved them, and now we're using them against you." Thassan's mind raced. He was old, but he was not slow. He understood what was happening, the scope of it, the planning that must have gone into it, the incredible patience and discipline required to keep a secret this large for this long. He also understood something else. "You don't want to negotiate," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," Tanaka agreed. "We don't. We spent 70 years planning this moment. We know exactly what we want, and we know exactly how to get it. The only question is how many of you have to die before the rest of you understand. What do you want?" "Everything." The word hung in the air. "Earth, our colonies, our people, our freedom. Everything you took from us, returned. Everything you did to us, paid for." "Impossible. The Concord will never. The Concord will do what it must to survive." Tanaka's voice cut through his words like a blade. "You've ruled for 40,000 years by being stronger than everyone else. That ends today. From now on, you deal with us as equals, or you don't deal with us at all." Thiessen felt something he hadn't felt in centuries. Real fear. Not the manageable concern of political challenges or the distant threat of rival species. True fear. The kind that gripped your hearts and squeezed. "If you attack us," he said, "grasping for any leverage, we will respond with everything we have. The full force of the Concord military. You cannot defeat 12 elder species." Tanaka smiled again. This time, there was something almost sad in her expression. "Grand Arbiter," she said, "I was born in a labor camp on Mars. I never saw the sky until I was 40 years old. I watched my friends die in mines and factories, work to death for species who thought of us as animals. My people have lived in slavery for 3 generations. She paused. "You think we're afraid of dying? You think the threat of war will make us back down? We've been dying every day for 70 years. The only difference now is that we get to fight back." The screen went dark. Above Axiom Prime, the Spite of Terra held position, its weapons humming with power. Around it, space began to ripple as more ships emerged from hiding human ships, each one a miracle of stolen technology and desperate genius. In the great chamber of the summit, the representatives of 12 elder species stood in shocked silence. They had come here to celebrate their eternal dominion over the stars. Instead, they were watching that dominion crumble. Grand Arbiter Thassan looked at the view screen, at the impossible fleet that had appeared from nowhere, at the weapons that were pointed at the heart of Concord civilization. And for the first time in his very long life, he understood what it meant to be afraid. Grand Arbiter Thassan made his decision in less than a minute. He was 3,000 years old. He had survived political coups, assassination attempts, and wars between the elder species themselves. He had not survived this long by hesitating when action was needed. "Summon the emergency fleet," he commanded. "All vessels in the Axiom system converge on our position. Destroy those ships." His officers rushed to obey. The emergency fleet was exactly what its name suggested. A reserve force kept hidden in the outer reaches of the Axiom system, ready to respond to any threat to the summit. 400 warships crewed by the finest warriors of all 12 species. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds. Grand Arbiter, Commander Vexal said carefully, "Are you certain this is wise? We don't know what capabilities these human ships possess. Perhaps we should attempt negotiation? Negotiation?" Thiesen's voice cracked like a whip. "With slaves? With animals? The Concord does not negotiate with species who forget their place. We destroy them, completely, as an example to any others who might be watching." The order went out. Across the Axiom system, 400 warships turned toward the planet and began accelerating. Valkyrie dreadnoughts, Krethor battlecruisers, Moldok assault carriers, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known. On the bridge of the Spider Terra, Admiral Tanaka watched them come. "Count?" she asked. 417 vessels, Admiral, her tactical officer reported, including 12 Valkyrie dreadnoughts, 43 Krethor battlecruisers, and 91 Moldok assault carriers. The rest are support vessels and escorts. Time to engagement? 17 minutes. Tanaka nodded. She had expected this. The Concord's response to any challenge was always the same: overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy they couldn't simply crush with numbers and firepower. That was about to change. "Signal the fleet," she said. "Formation Beta. All ships to combat stations. Weapons free on my command." Around the Spider Terra, the human fleet moved into position. 17 capital ships, each one smaller than the Concord dreadnoughts, but bristling with weapons that the elder species had never seen. Between them, dozens of smaller vessels, corvettes, fighters. Support craft formed a protective screen. It was a tiny force compared to the armada approaching them. Any observer would have called the battle a foregone conclusion. Any observer who didn't know humans. "Admiral," said Captain Rodriguez, the Spite's weapons officer, "shall the first target the dreadnoughts first?" "No." Tanaka studied the tactical display. "Target the flagships. I want every species to see their leaders die before their eyes." "Yes, Admiral." The Concord fleet continued its approach. Thiesen watched from his command chamber, surrounded by screens showing the battle space. He could see the human ships small, outnumbered, hopelessly outgunned. "They haven't run," Vexal observed. "They're holding position. They have nowhere to run. Our ships will be in firing range in." The first human ships opened fire. Thiesen had expected many things. He had expected the humans to fight. They were stubborn creatures. He knew that much. He had expected them to do some damage before they were overwhelmed. He had even prepared himself for the possibility of losing a few ships. He had not expected this. The weapons that lanced out from the Spider Terra were not plasma cannons. They were not energy projectors. They were not missiles or torpedoes or anything else in the Concord's extensive database of military technology. They were something new. The beams hit the lead Valkyrie dreadnought and passed through its shields like they weren't there. The ship didn't explode immediately. Instead, it seemed to fold in on itself, crushed by forces that shouldn't exist. In the span of 3 seconds, a vessel that had taken 50 years to build became a twisted bowl of metal, no larger than a house. "What?" Thiesen couldn't finish the sentence. More beams. More ships dying. The human weapons struck with perfect accuracy, each shot finding a critical target. A Krethor battlecruiser's reactor core. A Moldok carrier's ammunition storage. A Valkyrie dreadnought's command bridge. "Return fire," Vexal screamed. "All ships, return fire." The Concord fleet opened up with everything it had. Plasma bolts streaked across space. Energy beams lanced toward the human ships. Missiles by the thousand roared toward their targets. The human ships moved. They shouldn't have been able to move like that. Ships that size had mass inertia, limits to how fast they could change direction. But the human vessels danced through the incoming fire like water flowing around stones. They spun and rolled and reversed course with impossible speed. Their movements coordinated with perfect precision. "They're not using conventional drives," said a Kretha technical officer, his voice disbelieving. "They're using... I don't know what they're using. Gravity manipulation? But that's theoretical. No one has ever. A plasma bolt from a Valkyrie dreadnought finally found its target. It struck the spite of Terra amidships, a hit that should have crippled any vessel. The spite shields flared and held. "Impossible," Vexal whispered. "Our weapons can penetrate anything. Any shield, any armor. Not anymore," Thiessen said. His voice was hollow. "They built something we can't destroy." The battle continued. And it was not really a battle at all. On the bridge of the Spite of Terra, Admiral Tanaka watched the Concorde fleet die. There was no joy in her expression. No triumph. Just cold efficiency and something that might have been sadness. "Status?" she asked. "Hull breach in Section 7, her damage control officer reported. 17 casualties. Repair teams are responding." "Acknowledged. Continue firing pattern Alpha." Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. Every officer at their station, every system functioning perfectly. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, practicing in simulators while pretending to clean Concorde facilities. Now, they were proving that the training had worked. The human ships worked together in ways the Concorde had never seen. They moved as a single unit, each vessel covering the others. Their weapons coordinated to create overlapping fields of fire. When one ship was threatened, others moved to protect it. When an opening appeared in the enemy formation, they exploited it instantly. "They're not used to this," said Captain Rodriguez, watching the Concorde fleet's confused movements. "They've never fought anyone who fights back effectively. Look at them. They're still trying to form traditional battle lines." Tanaka nodded. "They've been the biggest fish in the pond for 40,000 years. They've forgotten what it's like to be hunted." A Moldok assault carrier broke formation and charged directly at the Spite, its weapons blazing. It was a desperate move, brave and stupid, the act of a commander who couldn't accept what was happening. The Spite's main battery spoke once. The carrier ceased to exist. "Admiral," said the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Concorde flagship. They want to talk. Tell them we're busy. They can talk when they stop shooting at us." "Yes, Admiral." The Concorde fleet was falling apart now. Their formation had broken as ships tried to evade the human weapons. Some were retreating, their commanders finally understanding that this was not a fight they could win. Others were still advancing, pride or duty driving them forward to their deaths. A Valkyrie dreadnought managed to land, a solid hit on one of the smaller human cruisers. The ship's shields flickered, failed, and a human corvette immediately moved to cover the damaged vessel, laying down suppressing fire while repair teams worked to restore power. "The Resolute is back in the fight," Tactical reported. "Shields at 60% and climbing." Thiessen watched from his command chamber as his fleet was destroyed. Ship after ship, each one representing thousands of lives and decades of construction, vanishing in flashes of light. The emergency fleet that should have crushed this human uprising was being carved apart like meat. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked. His voice was quiet now, drained of anger. 247 confirmed destroyed, Vexal answered. "Another 83 heavily damaged and retreating. We have less than 100 combat-effective vessels remaining." "And the humans?" "One ship disabled. None destroyed." Thiessen closed his eyes. "One ship." They had thrown 400 warships at the humans and had managed to damage one ship. "Recall the fleet," he said. All vessels, break off and retreat. Grand Arbiter? You heard me. Fall back. This battle is lost. The order went out. The surviving Concorde ships began pulling away, their drives straining to escape the killing field. Some made it. Others didn't. Human ships pursuing them, weapons still firing, destroying any vessel that moved too slowly. 11 minutes. The battle had lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the debris field stretched across thousands of kilometers. 312 Concorde warships destroyed. Another 63 crippled and drifting. The greatest military defeat in the history of the galaxy. On the spite of Terra, Admiral Tanaka allowed herself a single moment of satisfaction. Then she turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to the planet. All frequencies. Channel open, Admiral. Tanaka composed herself. The words she spoke now would be heard across Axiom Prime, across the Concorde, across the entire galaxy. They had to be perfect. Grand Arbiter Thiessen, she said, you sent 400 ships to destroy us. I count fewer than 90 left. Would you like to try again? There was no response for a long moment. Then Thiessen's face appeared on the screen. He looked old now, older than he had before the battle. His 4 eyes were dull, his copper skin pale. What do you want? He asked. I told you what we want. Earth, our colonies, our people, our freedom. Everything you took, returned. The Concorde will never. The Concorde just lost 300 ships in 11 minutes. Tanaka's voice was ice. We have 32 capital ships, Grand Arbiter, and factories building more every day. How many more battles do you want to fight? Thiessen was silent. I understand that this is hard for you, Tanaka continued. You've ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years. You've never had to consider other species as equals. But that era is over. You can accept that now, while your empire is still intact, or you can learn it the hard way. Your choice. You ask the impossible. The other species will never agree. Then convince them. You're the Grand Arbiter. That's your job. Tanaka leaned forward. Let me make something clear to you. We don't want to destroy the Concorde. We don't want war. We want our home, our freedom, and the chance to live in peace. Give us those things and we'll be the best neighbors you've ever had. Refuse and... She paused. And we'll show you what we built for war. Thiessen's face went pale. What do you mean? The Spite of Terra was a message. It was built to show you what we're capable of. A demonstration. Tanaka smiled, and there was no warmth in it. Our war fleet is still under construction. Bigger ships. More weapons. Things that make this, she gestured around her at the bridge of the Spite, look like a toy. Do you really want to see what happens when they're finished? The screen went dark. In his command chamber, Thiessen sat alone, surrounded by the wreckage of everything he had believed. For 3,000 years, he had ruled with absolute certainty, certain of the Concorde's power, certain of his species' superiority, certain that the natural order would never change. Now that certainty was gone. He thought about the human admiral, born in a labor camp, never saw the sky until she was middle-aged, watching friends die in mines and factories. And yet somehow, against all odds, she had become this, a warrior, a leader, a symbol of everything the Concorde had tried to crush. How many more like her were out there? Millions? Billions? An entire species that had been pushed down for 70 years, finally rising up, finally fighting back? The Concorde had made humans into slaves. And in doing so, they had created the most dangerous enemy they had ever faced. Thiessen understood now what he had failed to understand before. The mistake wasn't in conquering Earth. It wasn't in enslaving humanity. It wasn't even in underestimating human intelligence or determination. The mistake was in thinking that humans could be broken, They couldn't. They could be beaten down, oppressed, forced to bow. But somewhere inside them, something always survived. A spark that couldn't be extinguished. A rage that couldn't be satisfied. A will that couldn't be crushed. The Concord had tried to stamp out that spark for 70 years. Instead, they had fanned it into a fire that was now burning their empire to ash. Above Axiom Prime, the Spite of Terra held position, its weapons cooling, its crew watching the ruins of the Concord fleet drift past. The battle was over. The war was just beginning. But for the first time in 7 decades, humanity had hope. Admiral Tanaka stood at the view screen, looking down at the jeweled world below. Somewhere on that world, the leaders of 12 elder species were learning what it felt like to be afraid. Learning what it felt like to face an enemy they couldn't simply destroy. Learning what it felt like to be human. "Admiral," said Captain Rodriguez. "What now?" Tanaka turned away from the view screen. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something fierce and bright. "Now we negotiate," she said. "And if they won't negotiate, we fight. Either way, this ends with our people free. Whatever it takes. Whatever the cost." She walked toward the door of the bridge, then paused and looked back. "We named this ship the Spite of Terra," she said, "because spite is what kept us going all these years. Spite and stubbornness and the absolute refusal to give up. They thought they could break us with cruelty and time. They were wrong. They made us stronger. They made us smarter. They made us ready for this moment." Her voice softened. "Now let's go show them what that means." The great chamber of the summit had never been so quiet. Representatives of 12 elder species sat in their designated places, but there was none of the usual noise and movement that filled these gatherings. No whispered conversations. No political games. Just silence, heavy and thick, like the air before a storm. They were waiting. Grand Arbiter Thiessen sat on his throne of black crystal, looking older than anyone had ever seen him. In the hours since the battle, reports had been coming in from across Concord space. None of them were good. 3 more border fleets had gone dark. Not destroyed, simply silent, their communications cut. Their positions unknown. Human workers across 100 worlds had stopped working. They stood at their stations, tools in hand, but they did not move. They did not speak. They simply waited, their eyes fixed on monitors that showed the battle above Axiom Prime playing on repeat. And everywhere, in every corner of the Concord's vast empire, things were breaking down. Computer systems malfunctioning. Transportation networks failing. Orbital platforms losing power. Small problems, each one by itself, but together they painted a picture of an empire that was slowly, systematically falling apart. "How is this possible?" demanded Arbiter Krex of the Moldok. His species was known for their aggression, their love of direct action. How can a slave species coordinate attacks across such distances? They have no leadership, no organization. No, they have all of those things. Thiessen interrupted. His voice was tired. They have had them for decades. We simply chose not to see. The chamber doors opened. Admiral Yuki Tanaka walked in alone. She wore a simple uniform gray fabric, no decorations, nothing that suggested rank or status. Her face was calm, her eyes steady. She moved with the controlled confidence of someone who knew exactly where they were and what they were doing. Behind her, the doors closed. Guards moved to block the exit, but Tanaka didn't seem to notice. She walked to the center of the chamber and stopped, looking up at the assembled rulers of the galaxy. "Grand Arbiter," she said. "Arbiters, thank you for receiving me." "You were not invited," snapped Arbiter Vess of the Krethar. "You appeared in this chamber without authorization. That is a violation of the same protocols that allow your species to exterminate others without trial." Tanaka's voice was level. "I'm sorry. I must have missed that chapter in your law books. Vess opened his mouth to respond, but Thyssen raised a hand. Admiral Tanaka, he said. You asked for this meeting. Speak. Tanaka nodded. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data tablet, which she placed on the table in front of her. These are our terms, she said. They are not negotiable. You presume much, said Arbiter Mole of the Zethany. His species had 6 arms and no face that humans would recognize. Just a cluster of sensory organs arranged in no particular pattern. You have won one battle. The Concord has resources you cannot imagine. If we choose to, you have resources, Tanaka agreed. Ships, weapons, workers, all very impressive. She paused. Tell me, Arbiter Mole, how many of your workers are human? Mole said nothing. The answer is 4 billion, Tanaka continued. 4 billion humans working in Zethani facilities right now. Mining your minerals, building your ships, maintaining your infrastructure. If they all stopped working at the same moment, what would happen? They would be punished, harshly. They would be dead, Tanaka agreed. And you would be left with 4 billion corpses and no one to operate your systems. How long would your civilization survive without labor? The chamber was silent. This is not a threat, Tanaka said. This is a fact. Humans make up a significant portion of the workforce for every species in this room. You designed it that way. We breed fast. We work hard. We die cheap. Very efficient. Her voice hardened. But it means we're everywhere. In your minds. In your factories. In your homes. And now, for the first time, we're coordinated. We're armed. And we're angry. What do you want? Thyssen asked. I told you. Everything. Tanaka picked up the data tablet. Item 1. The immediate return of Earth and all human colonial territories. Item 2. The release of all humans currently held in bondage, with transport provided to wherever they wish to go. Item 3. Reparations for 70 years of slavery, calculated at compound interest. Item 4. Full recognition of humanity as a sovereign species, with all rights and protections granted to Concord members. Impossible, said Arbiter Krex. The resources alone are a fraction of what you have taken from us. Tanaka's voice cracked like a whip. For 70 years, humans have worked your mines, built your ships, cleaned your stations. We have been paid nothing. We have been given nothing but enough food to survive. Do you have any idea what that labor is worth? She touched the tablet, and numbers appeared on every screen in the chamber. I do. We calculated it. Every hour of work, every human life spent in your service, every child who grew up without knowing freedom. The total, she paused, is more than the combined GDP of the Concord for the last 500 years. The representatives stared at the numbers. Some of them began to speak, but their voices died in their throats. Obviously, we don't expect you to pay that, Tanaka continued. It would bankrupt every species in this room. But you will pay something. Consider it a lesson, a reminder of the true cost of slavery. And if we refuse? Asked the SS and Tanaka looked at him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Grand Arbiter, she said finally, do you know why we named our first ship the Spite of Terra? I assume it was meant to be symbolic. It was. But not in the way you think. Tanaka walked closer to the throne, close enough that the guards tensed. Spite is a funny emotion. Most species don't understand it. The Volcari certainly don't. Your word for it translates to small anger, doesn't it? Something petty. Beneath you, she stopped at the base of the throne steps. But human spite is different. Human spite kept slaves working in fields for generations, waiting for a chance to escape. Human spite kept resistance fighters alive in forests for years, eating roots and dreaming of revenge. Human spite has survived kings and tyrants and empires that thought they would last forever. Her voice dropped. Human spite built a fleet in secret. Human spite trained soldiers in the dark. Human spite kept hope alive when hope was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. She smiled. That's why we named the ship what we did. Because spite is what brought us here. And spite is what will keep us fighting if you say no. You would destroy yourselves to destroy us? We would die free rather than live as slaves. Yes. Tanaka shrugged. Maybe that's hard for you to understand. Your species has lived for thousands of years. You think in centuries. You plan for millennia. The idea of throwing away your life for something as abstract as freedom probably seems insane to you. She turned to face the rest of the chamber. But humans don't live for thousands of years. We get decades. A few good decades if we're lucky. And when you've spent those decades in chains, the idea of dying on your feet instead of your knees starts to look pretty attractive. The chamber was silent. The spite of terror was a message, Tanaka said. A demonstration of what we're capable of. We built it to show you that we're not the weak, helpless creatures you thought we were. We built it to make you understand that the rules have changed. She walked to the center of the chamber again and turned to face Thiessen. Would you like to know what we built for war? Thiessen didn't answer, but his face had gone pale. 17 shipyards, Tanaka continued. That's what we have now. 17 hidden facilities, all of them operational, all of them producing new ships as we speak. In 6 months, we'll have 100 capital ships. In a year, 300. In 2 years, she spread her hands. In 2 years, we'll have the largest military force in the galaxy. You're lying. Am I? Tanaka's smile was thin. You thought we couldn't build one ship. We built 32. You thought we couldn't coordinate across Concord space. We shut down your communications with a single signal. You have consistently underestimated us for 70 years. Do you really want to bet your civilization that you're right this time? Thiessen was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice heavy. What guarantees do we have that you will honor your terms? That you won't simply destroy us once you have the power? None. Tanaka's answer was immediate. You'll have to trust us. You'll have to trust us. Just like you expected us to trust you when you conquered Earth. Just like you expected us to believe you when you said we would be treated fairly if we cooperated. We never said. You said a lot of things. Most of them were lies. Tanaka's voice hardened. Here's the difference between us. We mean what we say. We don't want war. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone, to rebuild our world, to live our lives in peace. Give us that, and you'll never have to fear us. She paused. But threaten us again, ever, and we will destroy you. Not because we want to, because we refuse to live in fear. The representatives looked at each other. Whispered conversations broke out around the chamber, urgent discussions in a dozen languages. Each species calculating the costs and benefits, the risks and rewards. Thiessen watched them all with tired eyes. He was 3,000 years old. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had watched species challenge the Concord and be crushed. He had believed, with absolute certainty, that this was how things worked. The strong ruled, the weak served, and that was the natural order. Now that certainty was gone. The humans should have been crushed. They should have been broken. 70 years of slavery, 3 generations of oppression. It should have been enough to destroy any species. Instead, it had created something new, something dangerous, something that the Concord had never faced before. An enemy that couldn't be broken, only killed or negotiated with. We need time, he said finally, to discuss among ourselves, to consider your terms. You have until morning. Tanaka turned toward the door. After that, we begin Operation Sunrise." "What is Operation Sunrise?" Tanaka paused at the door and looked back over her shoulder. "It's what happens if you say no. You don't want to find out." She walked out of the chamber. The doors closed behind her. The silence that followed lasted for almost a minute. Then, everyone started talking at once. The debate lasted through the night. Representatives argued and threatened and pleaded. Some wanted to reject the human terms outright, to marshal every ship and weapon in the Concorde for a final, decisive war. Others counseled acceptance, pointing out that the humans had demonstrated capabilities the Concorde couldn't match. And some, quietly, began to consider their own positions. If the Concorde fell, what would happen to their species? Their territories? Their power? By morning, nothing had been resolved. But something had shifted. Thiessen could feel it, a change in the room, a new reality taking shape. The elder species were no longer united against a common threat. They were divided, uncertain, afraid. Some were already making private deals, reaching out to the humans through back channels, trying to secure their own survival, whatever happened to the rest. The Concorde was breaking apart, and there was nothing Thiessen could do to stop it. When the sun rose over Axiom Prime, Admiral Tanaka returned to the chamber. This time, she was not alone. Behind her walked Maya-chan, Amara Okonkwo, and a dozen other leaders of the human resistance, people who had spent their entire lives fighting in the shadows, and who now stood in the heart of the enemy's power. "Have you reached a decision?" Tanaka asked. Thiessen rose from his throne. He was old, tired, defeated, but he was still Grand Arbiter. He would do his duty until the end. "The Concorde," he began. Then he stopped, searching for words that didn't want to come. "The Concorde agrees to your terms," he said finally. "Earth will be returned. Human slaves will be freed. Reparations will be negotiated. And humanity will be recognized as a sovereign species." The words fell like stones into still water. Around the chamber, the representatives of 12 elder species sat in silence. Some looked angry. Some looked relieved. Some looked like they were already planning how to use this new situation to their advantage. But all of them, for the first time, looked at the humans with something that hadn't been there before: respect and fear. Tanaka nodded slowly. There was no triumph in her expression, just a kind of weary satisfaction, the look of someone who had completed a very long journey. "Thank you, Grand Arbiter. I know this wasn't easy. It was necessary." The San's voice was bitter. "You left us no choice." "No, you left us no choice. 70 years ago, when your ships appeared above Earth, you could have treated us as equals. You could have asked for our cooperation instead of demanding our submission. You could have been neighbors instead of masters." She shook her head. "You didn't. And this is the result. Not because we wanted it, because you created us. Every weapon we built, every strategy we developed, every moment of rage and spite that kept us going, all of it came from what you did to us. We are your creation, Grand Arbiter. Your masterpiece." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The humans who served you, the ones who are being freed today, they're going to need time. Time to heal. Time to learn what it means to be free. Some of them won't know how to live without masters. Some of them will be angry for a very long time." Her voice softened. "Be patient with them. They've been through things that none of you can imagine. And they're going to need help, not because they're weak, but because healing takes time." She walked toward the door, her people falling in behind her. "Admiral Tanaka," Thiessen called out. She stopped. "For what it's worth. I'm sorry. For what we did. For what you suffered." Tanaka was still for a long moment. Then she turned her head slightly, not quite looking back. "I know," she said. But sorry doesn't give us our dead back. Sorry doesn't erase the memories. Sorry is just a word. She paused. What matters now is what happens next. We have a chance to build something new, something better than what came before. For both our peoples. Don't waste it. She walked out of the chamber. The doors closed behind her. Outside, the sun shone bright over Axiom Prime. Above, the Spite of Terra hung in orbit, a dark shape against the stars. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, billions of humans looked up at the sky. For the first time in 70 years, they looked up without fear. Freedom had come. Not easily, not quickly, not without cost. But it had come, and humanity would never let it go again. On the bridge of the Spite of Terra, Admiral Tanaka stood at the viewscreen and watched the sunrise over Axiom Prime. Behind her, her crew worked quietly, monitoring communications, tracking ship movements, doing the 1,000 small tasks that kept a warship running. The war was over, or at least this part of it was. There would be more struggles ahead, negotiations and treaties, and the long, hard work of building a new society. There would be humans who couldn't let go of their anger, and Concord species who couldn't let go of their pride. There would be setbacks and failures, and moments when it seemed like everything was falling apart. But they had won? Against all odds, against an enemy who had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years, they had won. Yuki Tanaka thought about her mother, who had died in the mines when Yuki was young. She thought about all the others, millions of humans who had lived and died in slavery, never knowing that their children would one day be free. She wondered if they would have been proud. A soft chime from her console drew her attention. She looked down and saw a message from the planet below, the first official communication from the Concord to free humanity. She didn't read it yet. There would be time for that later. For now, she just wanted to watch the sunrise. It was the first one she had ever seen as a free woman. And it was beautiful.